Welcome to Dayton Warcry Club. I'm Warren, and today I'm joined by my co-host Fred and special guest Peter Mercincavage from our latest tournament. Tonight we'll be talking about the results of our most recent local tournament, including a battle report featuring Fred and Peter where they went toe-to-toe in a rematch of last year's Gen Con finals. We'll also have our usual hobby update, talk about Warcry news and upcoming local events, all next on Dayton Warcry Club. All right, guys, how's it going?
Good. I'm good, Warren. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so far so good.
So yeah, as I talked about here, we have our friend Peter on. I've chatted with Peter at a number of events in the past, and it's great to have another solid player on to talk about Warcry and kind of go do a battle report in our sort of like post-mortem style. Before we do that, though, just tell us a little bit about yourself, like what's your hobby background, what got you into the Warcry, GW games? Do you have any other games in your background?
Oh, gosh. I've been playing tabletop games since I could comprehend them, to be perfectly honest. I had a friend of mine, Mike, growing up that introduced me to this small little group of Ultramarines he had. And that was about age 14 or 15. And I got pretty heavily into 40K after that, have entirely too much of it. But I kind of stepped away from it last edition, partly just because of my wife and I, we move a lot. And just where I moved to in Pennsylvania, there really wasn't much of a 40K scene. And that kind of just put the hobby on hold for me for a good bit. And then I just kept seeing more and more about and I kept thinking, like, I always loved the fantasy side of the miniatures. I just never had a reason to really get into it, and I had no interest in being big Age of Sigmar. So I was I kept looking at it, and I was like, oh, these miniatures are great. So I can literally pick my favorite ones and figure out how to make a warband out of it. And that kind of really drew me into the whole thing. And then I guess I haven't really looked back from it. And that was kind of mid first edition Warcry. But I have a pretty long background in miniatures, though I would say 40K was my biggest one.
Awesome. Yeah. And then so next we'll cover hobby update, and it looks like you're going to be branching out a little bit potentially.
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny because I actually have entirely too many warbands. I think I'm at like 26 now.
Oh, okay. It's just you only play Gitz in the tournaments we hear about.
That's correct. I tend to only bring Gitz to tournaments. And there's some reasons for that. But I actually have a lot of different warbands, though I've been trying to behave myself this year and finish a warband before I start a new one. And that was all going well till my wife's from the UK, and we went over there, and I was at Warhammer World, and it just kind of fell apart there, and I bought entire So my backlog is ridiculous again, but we'll get there. But yeah, just finished up my Stormcast there, and I'm currently working on the Khorne warband I picked up at Warhammer World. So yeah, keeping busy.
Yeah, I like the color scheme and the head swaps there. And I love Khorne as well. We have at least 3 Khorne enjoyers in our local area. No, 4 now.
Yeah, that many cool routes you can go with the warband. I'm actually surprised you don't see them more at tournaments, because I think they have a ton of potential. But I've been meaning to get behind and build one for a while. So as soon as I saw the Lord on Juggernaut at Warhammer World on the shelf, I was like, well, I guess it's happening.
Yeah, I have a couple Skull Crushers I picked up separately. Haven't built them yet, but that's just one of the ones I'm adding to my collection. And I think I have almost all of the heroes that are worth playing now as well, just randomly, because they have like this huge assortment of heroes.
Oh, they do. Yeah, what a selection. But yeah, pretty much been it for me, hobby side. I've just been slapping some Iron Jaws together this week, but that's pretty much been it.
Fred, what about you? We're going to see your FOMO Crusher in a bit.
Yeah, I haven't. I've been working on my Horns of a Shut Chaos Dwarf list, which is all old style Chaos Dwarf sculpts with the big hats and all the runes and everything. I had the leader done. I had the Fomoroid Crusher conversion done, which is going to be a Boltar, and I had the Flame Hurlers done, but I did not get the Shatterers done in time for the event. So I've told myself I'm not going to start anything else until I finish the Horns. So I'm working on getting those last couple of Shatterers done. I think the Warband has a lot of potential. Obviously, there's a recent result where it did very, very well. Shatterers are really gross. Flame Hurlers are really gross. Any list that can fit a Fomoroid Crusher in it, like, has that going on. So I'm excited to get those on the table. And then I picked up a third box of Rotmire Creed recently. So my next project will be getting Rotmire Creed up and on the table. So I have everything else Nurgle related done. I got to get Rotmire up and running.
It's a lot of boxes for just the bloated ones.
Need the bloated ones. And I don't even know that I'm going to run 3, but like I think that there are lists that do want 3. So I want to have that option.
Yeah, I thought Triple Hurt Flame Hurler was just a meme, and then we started seeing lists with it do well, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess not.
The Flame Hurler on its own has so much damage potential, just as like if you get it in the right position, that like that could theoretically be like the damage core of your army, and then you have like these insane Shatterers that like don't die and have 2-inch range and can sit and poke. I don't know. I only built 2 of the dwarves that I have, but we'll see. I might want the third.
Speaking from experience, playing against Javi at Atlantic City, the Flame Hurler is my most hated model in the game now. I'll be perfectly honest. It's disgusting what that 125 point model does on the board. Yeah, it's ridiculously good. Ridiculously good.
So, and like the Fomoroid Crusher list, like you have to play like a Demolisher with 2 weapons, which is not, I don't like, to make the points work. I don't know. You might want the third. That might be the optimal list. I'm not 100% sure, but they are gross.
Well, this is some of the stuff I've been working on. So this top picture there, that's the snapshot on my desk at one point in time. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember the best way to enjoy us is on YouTube, but we also have the audio version as well. But if you're watching this on YouTube, freeze frame this and see how many factions you can identify on my painting table in that given snapshot of time. And also there's a handful more up top you can't see out of view as well. I'll leave that as an exercise to the viewer.
Warren, as the TO of these local events, we haven't seen you put a 2.0 list on the table in a while.
No, I've occasionally been challenging. I'm bringing the war bands, and I'm occasionally challenging people. But I've been more content to just sit and organize and watch other people play. So I'll be getting some games at the next one we do, probably down at Mavericks though. Yeah, especially when doing a tournament, I focus all my efforts on the tournament.
If you had to bring a list right now, what would you bring?
Of what I have completed, it would be this next list, the Flesh Eater Courts I'm going to show you. Okay. But I also did this. I also got a bunch of Gitz based. So this was a gift from Hood on Discord. I purchased some terrain from him, and I got a whole lot of other stuff thrown in, including a fully painted Gitz warband. I just had to do some rebasing on it. So this was kind of a test run for a basing scheme I want to use for destruction. I'm probably going to modify it some, but as a standalone, just fun warband, just play a bunch of Gitz. I have, a lot of stuff there, so I have options there just to play as a fun casual warband. Most recent things I finished since the last time we had scheduled to talk was additions to my Flesh Eater Courts. So now I got a Vargulf Courtier, I got a second Crypt Horror, and I now have a Abhorrent Ghoul King. And so there's the whole collection right there with enough ghouls. I got 2 flyers, 2 horrors, a bunch of leader options, and this is all going to be going. Actually, be playing a lot of these in an event this weekend, as of the time of recording. So I would play something like this, just to give it a try. Kyle Smith's, based off of Kyle Smith's Adepticon list.
Yeah, that's I noticed the additions, and that's what it reminded me of was Adepticon, and yeah, I couldn't remember it, but yeah, you're right, Kyle Smith. That was a great list.
Yep, it's straight straight inspired by him, right? The second horror, which I needed, the courtier, and the Ghoul King, and I had them, and just a little bit of conversion work, and finally pulling the trigger on getting these done, because there's nothing like needing things for an event to actually light a fire under your butt and get you to get things done.
Very true. I really liked FEC in 1.0. I liked my Crypt Infernals, my Crypt Infernal Courtier list, but they're definitely different now. I love the Vargolf Courtier. That is a great unit, and has a lot of utility as well as being really killy. So there's a couple of different ways to build FEC right now, especially since we got the new self-contained warband, the Royal Beast Flayers, give you some interesting ally options if you want to go pure swarm, and some interesting stuff you can do there. So yeah, it's an interesting list to explore. I haven't really explored it much in 2.0 besides that Dreadblade Harrow list we were working on a ways back with the Vargolf Courtier. But yeah, good stuff.
Yep. And then next up is going to be Iron Jaws. So I got them all built, all primed. Time to start working on Iron Jaws. That'll be my next tournament level list to finally start getting pieces done and get on the battlefield. So next up is our news section and latest previews, and a lot of these I actually got to talk about on the Tabletop and Beyond podcast. You can check them out at Tabletop and Beyond. Also, there's a YouTube channel for it if you want to hear more about me talking about these previews, the new starter set, and then also we were talking about those Beast Flayer ghouls, talking about that warband as well, and a little bit about tournament scoring too. Some of the things we might talk about today here as well. But if you want to hear more, you can check out Tabletop and Beyond as well. I was a guest on there. But we're going to talk about the Monsta-Killaz, the Cruel Boys warband that got announced at the Not 40K preview. So what do you guys think about this?
It's interesting to see more Cruel Boys support. Which is a good thing. The leader model is a wildly over-engineered model
Yes.
in terms of just, it's a little busy, but I think it's fine. You get giant killer monkeys. I mean, I'm all for it on paper.
The part I'm trying to figure out, right, is maybe I'm the only one, but I was looking at this trying to figure out how this makes 1,000 points.
Yeah, it's a good question.
For the monkeys, probably like 150 each. The leader, 200, gets you to 5. Your 3 big chaff guys, probably be in the expensive chaff range, like 95s. Yeah, it still gets you a little bit short if it's truly 8 models. So maybe the monkeys are going to be fast and you're going to be paying more for them. I don't know.
Either that, or I was kind of wondering whether or not the boss was going to be just an extra expensive bespoke hero that combined with monkeys, because I have a hard time believing those Cruel Boys, like basic gut rippas, are 75 points and they look better than these guys. So I'm really curious to see how the points average out and what the abilities look like. I think that'll be the biggest thing for me.
It would be cool to see them go with a bigger, tougher, heavier hitting bespoke hero, which they've really shied away from. It's really hard to get more than 20 wounds in a bespoke warband right now. Mm-hmm. And it'd be cool to see them break the mold and go for like a true build around hero type model. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, the internet's all about the monkeys.
Yes.
Offmeta Musings is sculpting his all monkey warband. I was a little cool on him in the beginning. I was like, okay, we got enough mascots, we got enough weird animals in our warbands, but it's starting to grow on me since the last time I talked about him.
To me, the MVP is the grot with the egg. I think that's the best model out of the warband in my opinion. But
yes, tiny goofy mascots are the best.
Oh, they are.
Pot grot, stab grot, egg grot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I like the warband. I'm very curious. To Fred's point, I do think the hero is really overdone. But I mean, depending on how you customize it and stuff like that, you can always leave a couple pieces off or whatever. But yeah, I'm more curious just to see how the points lay out and the abilities. I think that's what will really be a telling thing about this warband.
It also it's weird too. The timing is weird. It feels like an afterthought. Like, yeah, we were just announced one warband at the end of the whole GUR cycle.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like we've gotten Beast Flayers and then Monsta-Killaz. It's, you know, GUR is real heavy on the we're here to kill monsters kind of thing. They didn't really stretch themselves too much creatively on this one, but the models are cool. And like I said, it's cool to have more Cruel Boys in the game, like a relatively recent added faction to get some more support. So, you know, we'll see how it shakes out. But overall, I think I'm like pro this box from what we know about it so far. See how the stats work out. The last couple of bespokes to come out have all been really interesting rules-wise.
Yeah, there's been some very powerful, very powerful abilities that make them useful in a variety of warbands, both in faction and across the alliance.
Yeah, like they've shown a willingness to do some interesting things, like the Questers, which are all heroes. You know, so you never know. They could have some real interesting rules. They've shown a willingness recently to kind of do that. See how it works out.
It does make me curious for the warbands we're getting in the fall, because we got three more for the fall, and I wonder whether or not they will kind of stick with that Gnarlwood theme going into them. I guess that's the more curious direction, since we're stepping away from the big boxes, what that's going to kind of look like.
Yeah, I think that was part of my cooler reaction to this was the fact that, like, you know, I'm a little burnt out on the 4 quarterly boxes full of meat trees, etc. And we got another one that's obviously kind of based in GUR.
Which makes sense. I get that. But yeah, I also fully understand the meat tree burnout. Yeah.
Well, this is not directly related to Warcry, but we can only hope. There was an Underworlds review, and I wouldn't be a Skaven enjoyer if I didn't talk about this. These are some great looking plague monks.
Awesome models. We have a really bad recent track record of getting rules out for these. We have a ton of warbands right now, like sitting out there with great models looking for rules. Exactly. You know, your Hexbane's Hunters, like those are great models. Would be really cool to have rules. But I'd love to have rules for these guys. They're great models. And of course, you know, Plaguey, they're Nurgle-y.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with Fred, the fact that, like, you haven't seen a lot of rules coming out for the Underworld's warbands, and there's some great ones. I want to see Night Haunt rules for that recent.
Oh yeah, the Headsman's Court.
Yes.
Yes.
The Gore Chosen of Grom.
Yeah,
Grom, somebody.
Yep, Gore Chosen of Drom.
Yeah,
Great.
Including the Gore Hulk.
Yes, it has the Gore Hulk. We don't have Gore Hulk rules, and that's a disaster.
Yeah,
but
you know, I'm
not holding my breath, but I'd love to put these guys on the queue and get to them.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we see another. They did that with one of the early White Dwarfs of the year, where there was like four or five warbands and one White Dwarf. So I'm still saying fingers crossed. I think we'll see it. It's just
This just it's been dribbled out then since then. There was Grizel's Arsenal, and there was Grinkark's Loon Court.
Yeah.
So you like one per magazine, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy a White Dwarf to get the rules for one Underworld's warband. You got to get at least a couple in there if you're going to get my $13.
Yeah, I hope they do it. I'll gladly buy it. I want rules.
I want my Hexbane's Hunters on the table.
Yeah, if you're listening, GW, we want rules for Nether Maze. We want all these, right? We'll buy your magazines if you do.
I'll buy your magazines and I'll buy your everywhere I go, the shops always have these Underworld warbands sitting there. It's not like they're flying off the shelves necessarily. I will buy them. I have every single one up through Nether Maze, like without exception, because I knew they were getting Warcry rules. Like, give me some hope they're getting Warcry rules. I'll go buy the ones I don't have right now.
And then finally, also we finally saw an official preview for Crypt of Blood. Now we saw this get leaked a few months back, but now it's kind of official. So it's going to be Crimson Court versus
Xandire's Truth Seekers.
Yes, Xandire's Truth Seekers.
Xandire is a great model. It's great to have more access to Calthea Xandire out there. Great model, great rules. And Crimson Court is a great warband too. So I think these are two good choices to have out there available to new players or to keep those in circulation. They're both popular. I know that the Crimson Court was really hard to find for a while. So yeah, good stuff.
So the internet's been divided on this. What do you guys think about this as a set?
It's not for me. As an extremely invested player that has all these models, I think it's a good mix of models to start with. It's not. Did it have to be like Stormcast? You know, maybe not, but I think it's fine. They picked a good Stormcast warband at least.
Yeah, my big thing is I understand that there's a lot of guys out there going like, hey, these aren't full war bands, right? So it's kind of like you're stepping into the hobby, but not really stepping into the hobby because you can't bring this and play against somebody else. For me, I think it's great because Warcry needs a cheaper way to get into the game.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now we haven't seen the price yet. And
no, we haven't.
that's the big floating question mark. But if GW has any sense and makes this affordable, I think it's wonderful because it's one of those things you can put this in Barnes and Nobles, you can put this in Walmart, right? And it's just like you can pick it off the shelf and get sucked in, and you'll start buying the plastic. That's what happens. But
yeah, they're reasonably good. You can jump off from either one of these bands in a lot of different directions. Calthea Xandire can go into a million different order war bands. Soulblight Gravelords is ridiculously deep, and you can build it 1,000 different ways. So they picked two good ones where you're not like pigeonholed right away, where like you're either going to play exactly this list or your models aren't going to be good. So they both can branch off effectively, which I like.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but the new starter set that they revamped for Underworlds is the Soulblight Gravelord Skeletons and the Hunter Stormcast, isn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yep.
So you can't tell me that's not coincidence they picked those two, because if you picked up both boxes, then there you go. You're set up with 2,000-point war bands.
Yeah. And Sons of Elmorn are very good too. So you get a lot of good models. I mean, very playable. Sons of Elmorn you can slot that entire faction right into a Soulblight list, and it's very playable.
Yeah. As far as which ones they could have picked, I don't think they could have picked better, to be perfectly honest. I purposely have been waiting to get both war bands, and I plan on grabbing the box.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I picked up. I don't really have a need for Crimson Court, and I picked up Xandire's Truth Seekers from the Warhammer Quest Relic Hunters game. So I got her from there. But the
other models are also fine, but the real exciting one out of there is Calthea Xandire.
Sure. And I think something to remember too is like you got some guys complaining that like, well, I'm not going to get any use out of this. And this is coming from more senior Warcry players. But the whole point is it's not really for senior Warcry players.
Yep. And I can recognize that.
Yeah. This is for people that are looking going, hey, maybe this game is worth checking out.
Yep. And there's a need for a starter set that's hopefully less than $99, right? My guess is still going to be, it's unfortunately going to be $99, which is an okay price point, but it's not really going to like attract folks for what you get.
If it was like $70,
yeah, 70 or 80, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
But for 8 models plus a little bit of terrain, that's not on the value side for expensive GW plastic.
Yeah, but it's a gateway. It's a gateway. So if they're intelligent, we'll see the 80, I think. But I don't know. We'll find out.
Yep. One other thing. So there were some other leaked images that we found out back when this whole thing was leaked. Worth noting that they did adjust. It looks like based on the translations, they did adjust one of the abilities for Crimson Court. They buffed one of the abilities, and they also changed the points on Enias the Curseborn, the flying vampire. A very minor change in points. So there's a precedent there. There might be multiple versions out there. There's the possibility, holding out hope that they do a rebalance, another pass through on all the 1.0 Underworld's warbands to get the points lined up with 2.0. Because right now there's still there's some outliers there that are very, very good and you want to play, and there's a lot more Underworld's ones that you just simply wouldn't want to touch because of the way the points algorithm has changed.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I would love.
Yeah, I'd love that. The only problem I have with that is, when has GW ever made rules for something that's out of print or out of production?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I'd love a revamp of the rules, because those models are just incredible, but I don't see them going back to those older war bands.
Just a points update. All we need.
That's all we want.
Well, all right. So now next up, talking about the tournament we had. So this was a couple of weeks ago now, and so the structure of the tournament here, we did. Actually, I just lifted the exact mission sequence from Adepticon. We did Power Struggle from the Rumble Pack. We did our old favorite Reaper, Loot and Pillage, and then Ley Lines. And so I felt that was actually a pretty good mix of objective missions, a kill mission, a treasure mission there. It wouldn't overly sway the tournament in favor of swarm warbands, and as you know, in Dayton we have all monsters blanket banned across the board to make for a more friendly and welcoming environment to newer players.
I think the mission pack was good. I enjoyed all my games. I think you did a good job of avoiding, because obviously, if anyone you played any Warcry at all, there's some egregiously bad missions, and I don't think any of them were featured here, so it worked pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's a great tournament pack. I really enjoyed it at Adepticon, and I enjoyed it just as much this time around.
Yep, I just wanted to keep it simple.
Yeah. These are intuitive missions, too. Even if you're relatively new to the game, and we had players at this event that were very new to the game, you can look at this and be like, oh, okay, Reaper, I have to kill opponents' units over a course of several turns. I have to go grab these objectives and hold on to them. These are good, intuitive missions that don't do anything real wonky, and are unlikely to tie, which I think is also important, especially with the way we structured this thing. Ties just really threw the whole thing for a loop. So yeah, good stuff.
Yep. Next episode, we won't talk about it now on this episode, but as of the time we're recording, there are 3 new match play missions in the next White Dwarf that are coming up, and they're interesting, but they kind of suffer from just the problems that you talked about there, Fred, where they might be conducive to ties, or there's a lot of extra stuff going on where, like, mechanics of the mission grant abilities and stuff, and I'm sort of not liking them at first. They would be fun narrative missions, just fun to play, but I'd think twice before putting them in a tournament with something on the line here. Like, these pure missions, right? You get 2 players and yeah, they're
rules and the interaction and the complexity come from the warband lists is my sort of preference on it. Yeah, let the list selection and the way the players play them determine the outcome, as opposed to the weird scenarios of the map and the mission pack, creating bizarre corner cases that, you know.
Yeah, a test of fundamentals, right? And it's not
Yeah.
not just who brought the most chaff to the mission, or who brought the biggest guy to the mission.
Or
Okay,
like the infamous one where you get points for every model that's above 2 inches off the floor. Like, who brought the models that can fly? Like, let the list play against each other.
Kind of reminds you of first edition when you're just pulling the cards, right? And
yes.
That's great for casual play, but when you pull one card that just you're looking at it going like, well, I'm pretty much have 90% chance I'm going to lose this round.
Yeah,
it makes a difference in a tournament scenario.
We had one of the very first games we played. I was playing ogres with lead belchers, and the mission was like get the treasure and keep it. And the twist was you can't attack a unit more than 3 inches away. So all my units are slow. Warren had one fast unit, and I couldn't shoot it. And the game was over on turn 1. Those old twist cards and stuff could create those scenarios.
Yeah. But like I said, great for casual play, not so good in a tournament setting.
Let's talk about the tournament. Let's go.
Let's talk about the results. So here we go. You got me presenting Fred with the winner's medallion there. Brought Nurgle again, 3-0-1. He won on tie breaks, as we'll talk about here in a little bit. For those listening on the podcast, the list is Varangard with Demon Forge Blade, Fulmoroid Crusher for 260 with the 3-6-4-8 profile is a big beater.
And he's got high toughness, and he's got a lot of wounds, and he's reasonably fast. Fulmoroid Crusher doesn't waste a single point. It puts all the points right where you want them. In terms of just like a mobile can opener. Great unit.
Sloppy Bile Piper, and then 6 Plague Bearers for a total of 975 points, 9 models. But tell us about your list.
So I think to really simplify it down, if you're building a list in Warcry right now, I have kind of a heuristic that I use. I don't know that it's the only way to build warbands, and of course there are some warbands that attack the game from a completely different direction, like Kharadron Overlords doesn't follow this metric, but it's still a very good warband. I want a very fast model, 10-inch move model.
So you have a Varangard with Demon Forge Blade here.
Yep. I want a second model that is at least a 4-inch move that can be a can opener type model in case you run across Stormcast or something like that.
So that's the Fulmoroid Crusher in this case. Addition to you.
Yes. And then I want the fill in with the best chaff available in faction. And I think if you start with that, you can only go so wrong as a real simple, because if you have objective missions, you can push forward early with your fast model and then catch up with your chaff, or countercharge if your opponent got it there first, and then having good chaff to spread around. If it's Reaper, you have like a really good mobile hammer that can go get points for you. It's hard to keep your opponent's chaff model safe from a move 10 Varangard. It gives you a lot of flexibility, and I think that if you're going to use that metric, that Nurgle Demons is the best faction to build with in the game, because their Plague Bearers are so good. And I think that the best fast objective taker / countercharge unit in the game is the Varangard. So if you kind of if you have those, the list kind of builds itself. Like, once you start with like Nurgle Demons leader, at least 6 Plague Bearers, and then fill out the top end from there, you can go a lot of different directions, right? Like the Fulmoroid Crusher could be a Spheranx, which will give you something to do with your dice, because Nurgle doesn't have a lot of great things to do with its dice. But I wanted the Strength 6 on the Fulmoroid. Previous lists I've played have had a Lord of Afflictions, which has 42 wounds and a good attack profile, kind of filling that slot. But the backbone of this list is obviously the Plague Bearers. They are absolutely insane. They are the damage profile is sneaky good. If you haven't played with them or against them, that extra point of crit damage on a 50-point model is really good. People will charge into 3 or 4 Plague Bearers, and they will be surprised at how fast their model dies because it just gets double attacked by 3 or 4 Plague Bearers and gets crit to death. And obviously this list is 975 points. I don't like leaving that many points on the table, but to get the Fomoroid in there, I built this list like the night before the tournament because I was going to play Horns of Shut and I wasn't going to get it finished. I didn't want to run back the Lord of Afflictions. I wanted to try something different. So I found this Fomoroid Crusher proxy and painted it the night before the tournament and was like, okay, this is close enough. But yeah, Plague Bearers are insane. If I were running this list back, I would turn the Sloppity Bilepiper into a Plague Ridden, which is the 90-point Lord, and add another Plague Bearer. I very rarely use the Sloppity Bilepiper ability. I don't think that in 2.0, in most of the missions,
I'm with you there. Everyone's like, oh, it's a movement buff. Okay, yeah, but it's a plus 1-inch move bubble. Like, yeah, it helps, but are you gonna pay the points to go do that and spend a triple to give that move buff?
Yeah, I don't. I've tried it twice now, and I've been underwhelmed with it both times. I think that just more Plague Bearers is going to be better.
Yeah, they'll get there. They'll get there eventually, and they'll fight.
They'll get there when they need to. You have the Varangard, and the Fomoroid Crusher is not slow. But the Varangard is great, as I've said a lot of times. The Varangard's ability to move 10 and then use a double to pop Relentless Killers and get another attack action worth of attacks. So it's basically a free action on a double. Makes it a really great mobile threat. The ability to move 10 and still get that many attacks on a target is great. It dies a lot. It has 6 toughness, but it only has like 32 wounds, which is a lot, but it's not a ton for 285 points. But it gets the job done every time you take it out, if you're careful with it. Even if it's assassin piece, and it goes in. It complements Nurgle so well because it's fast and killy, and the rest of Nurgle is slow and tanky. But yeah, love the list. Would play it again with those changes. You could swap around a lot. Lord of Afflictions is great. You could have a list that has 2 Fomoroid Crushers in it. You can do a lot of things. Start with 6 Plague Bearers and a Plague Ridden. Fill in the rest of your points, whatever you think you're going to need for the missions you're going to play that day, and you're going to do fine. Until they nerf Plague Bearers, it's a great way to start a list.
And we can see also, again, if you're on the YouTube channel, we can see pictures of the warband here. And I want to give shout out to our friend Horace, who showed up. We brought him on, and see, he's I think he's a good photographer. He claims he's a guy with a camera, but we had the light box set up, and we used some of his expertise to kind of get some nicer looking warband photos out of the light box. And even then, even with him there, it was still kind of a learning experience, and it's tough to get good looking pictures of miniatures, especially with like a large group there, trying to get everything all focused. But we'll see some more pictures of his handiwork here throughout the cast. All right, next up with the same record, and it was just via tie breaks and strength of schedule. Second place, we have Peter.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I tend to bring Gitz to tournaments. A couple of reasons behind that. One, I tend to find that there's a very high learning curve for that particular warband, just because it's very gimmicky and tricky to play. So I find it really puts me on an edge, and kind of I play at my best with them. But and that just how Destruction Soup works these days, there's just so many options and ways to play it. But this is probably one of my favorite ones I've put together so far.
Yeah. So we have a few of your typical models you've played in Gitz before. You have your Bounder Boss. You have 2 Brew Gitz. You have Prog Veneta, and you have 1 regular Stabba with net. Normally, I think you're playing like 1 Brew Git and 3 netters, so you got a little bit different configuration there. But then instead of running the Bolt Boy boss and what was your big hammer, a Mega Boss before?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Instead, you're bringing in a Crusher from Ogre Maw tribes and an Ard Boy boss. So the Crusher we know is quite a quality piece. Yeah, tell me about the Crusher and tell me about the Crusher first, both how it performed for you and also the conversion work you did.
Yeah, so it was interesting after Adepticon with the Mega Boss, because he's a phenomenal piece on the board, and he's very nicely priced for that 225. The problem I kept running into using him is I often felt he wasn't earning back that 225 each game. And whenever he got into combat, he did work. The problem was getting him into combat. So kind of switching over to, I didn't want to go Gut Lord because I didn't want to put that many points into one model, because I have to back it down to a 7 model list, and I wanted to keep it at 8. So the Crusher is a great pointed model, and it just having that rush ability, adding that 3 inches to movement on a double, it turns him into an absolute crusher. Yeah, literally. So because he's suddenly got that 8-inch range, 4-inch move plus 3, get just within an inch for combat, and he's away. So he's a lot faster than he looks. And I was very pleased with him. Very, very pleased. I'll probably bring him into another tournament. I think anyway. The conversion work, I do a lot of conversion work. Anything I bring for destruction soup, I make into Gloomspite Gitz. So this one was kind of, if you know old school fantasy, Grom the Paunch was a goblin who swallowed some troll flesh that keeps growing inside of him. So he just turns into this overly obese, large goblin. And I got a model off Etsy, and then kind of took a what is the Snurk Sour Ton? He's a fanatic. So I took a fanatic ball from one of the bits there and turned that into a big old club for him. And I was very pleased with how he turned out. Nothing too crazy on that one, but he fits right in.
Yep, I forgot to mention Snurk Sour Tongue earlier as well. Yep, can't have a Gitz list without him. And I have this correct now because I was going to ask why 7 models, but no, it turns out it is 8 models, and I think I have the points correct now.
Yeah, because then the other one, really the MVP of my last, because I played 6 rounds at Atlantic City, and I used the Hard Boy boss in that as well. And then your guys 5, or 4.
Yep.
4. So last 11 matches I've played, because I did 1 test run before Atlantic City with him. He's been the MVP of the list. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
And he's the Git on the mushroom with the modeled weapons.
Yeah. So I was trying to think of something the same size as Hard Boy Boss that was still Gitz. So I kind of came up with the shroom after it worked so well with my Bolt Boy Boss conversion. So I just kept rolling with it, and I love how he turned out. So that was all green stuff for the mushroom, and then the actual Hard Boy weapons he's holding there, and then I just custom made a Loon Boss to put on top. But even though he's move 3, that charge ability on the double gets him into combat. And again, for 135 points and his profile, it just a lot of work.
4.5 at 135. Yeah, that is a deceptively strong profile.
Yeah, a big thing with most of my Gitz list is a lot of Warcry players, they bring either 2 threats or 3 threats. That's a typical way to build a list, unless you're going something very unique. I've always been a big fan of running a 4-threat list, and that's why you always see me bringing Snurk. because I like being able to, I always try to outkill my opponent early in game. That's how I tend to beat larger war bands with the out activation, is I just remove that ability to do that. So this kind of a list is deceptively fast for what's there, because you look at it and you're like, it's the Bounder boss. Okay, that's your fast unit. But then Snurk rushes and hits you from 8 inches away. Crusher pays a double, hits you from 8 away.
Yep, on the mall path.
Yep. And then Hard Boy Boss with that charge ability, suddenly he jumps forward 6 and still hits you. It's deceptive, and that's something I enjoy. Each one of these models has a very important ability. And a lot of people don't like that, because it's like, you're just always dice hungry. You can't do everything you want on the board. I'm a firm believer in, I like creating opportunities. So you set up the board, and then it's each turn it's going, okay, how can I use the dice I have to be the most efficient with it?
Yep, and I think that's come up every time we talked about your lists on the cast without you here too.
It's a very hard list to play. I think Destruction Soup, anything you do with Gitz that way, for once you start hitting that higher ceiling with it. There's a lot to keep track of, but it can be very rewarding if you can play it well.
Is this one maybe a little more forgiving than the Bolt Boy Boss version?
Yes, I would say that. Yeah. Bolt Boy, you either love him or you hate him, I tend to find. I really enjoy him. The problem is, to be effective, you have to feed him doubles.
Yep.
One thing a lot of people don't get is Bolt Boy Boss actually is no slouch in melee. I've killed off a lot of things in melee with him, especially if you go Poison Blades.
Oh.
Because a lot of people make the mistake is they close him in combat thinking that's going to shut him down. But if you're already objective with him, suddenly you can remove chaff with him pretty easily.
One of the things that made the Lead Belcher in 1.0 so good, the Thunder Fist, was that if you let him stand back and shoot, he would chew you up. But if you closed in with him, he was a better melee fighter than most armies had, outside of maybe one really elite piece. But I like one of my big things, the drum I've been pounding for a while now, is get your free actions worth of value out of doubles, and it goes a really long way. And I love On the Maw Path. I love the charge. Like, those are really good. Like I mentioned earlier, like Relentless Killers can create a similar effect. Like, when you can get an action worth of game play out of a double, you can close an activation gap really quickly, and you can push an activation gap in your favor very hard. I love ogres for that.
Yep. Brugets virtually do that as well, turn a double into 3 attacks.
Sure.
Or close to it.
Yeah, and that's the thing with this list too, is you think about it, that you get in a scenario where your 55-point netta runs up, or the lovely 50-point prog runs up and nets some 250 model on their side. Suddenly, one of their main pieces isn't doing anything that round, and you still have 4 guys running around the board killing everything.
I remember our match at Adepticon. All we did for like the first 2 rounds was kill each other's netters. Like, that's all. Like, nets are very, very good.
Yeah.
And to get them on cheap models is a bonus that most warbands would kill for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shenanigans in that list. Absolutely.
And then, so third place, we had local Joel Hansen with Seraphon. I saw a couple of his games. He was also, well, we'll talk about the hobby award as well. But the Slan Star Master I saw was really overperforming. The 3/4, 3/6 range profile, just in a big unit. The Scarvitter on Cold One, and then a huge and a big contingent from Starblood Stalkers as well.
So the one of the takeaways of the Starblood Stalkers, it's like the good skinks. So you get like the old school skinks. which of course were good enough to get brutally nerfed in 2.0, but you can still get them if you want them, if you find them here. His one loss was to me, so we played, and
Starmaster lit up your Fomeroid.
yeah, well, he got crit, like out of like 9 dice, he rolled like 7 crits. It was insane. But with that said, it absolutely did happen, and I don't think I gave the Starmaster enough credit of being able to do that. Also, the game came down to a very final turn. The Starmaster used the Lords of Space and Time ability to move a unit to give him line of sight to attack to try to get those last couple of points, which isn't as cool of an ability as it was in 1.0 when it could teleport any unit and you were teleporting around like Annihilator Primes or whatever, but still very useful. The only problem I saw with the Starmaster is it's absolutely enormous size. It really, I mean, it flies, but it's not fast. And getting it around the board to get the lines of sight was tricky.
It's a large base, yes. It's always going to be on a large base. I think that's actually Lord Croak, right?
That is a Lord Croak, yes.
They use as a Starmaster, but it is the same base size.
Yeah, it's absurdly large. Like the old model, you could see how it fit on a Warcry board. I had concerns looking at it, going like, wow, what a piece.
And then the other thing to take away about Seraphon is, of course, Tearing Bite is
on the Saurus Warriors. Yep.
Busted.
Oh no, we're talking about tearing bite on the Saurus Warriors.
Tearing Bite, an ability so good it got nerfed out of Gloomspite Gitz, but they let Seraphon keep it.
It's not right. It's not right.
It's not right. It's not fair, but it's true. And Saurus Warriors can punch way above their weight class if you let them get in with Tearing Bite. So they are. They're not outrageously expensive, but you really have to give them a lot of respect on the battlefield as well. You cannot let your big heavy hitters get like when they have the dice to spend. You can't let your big heavy hitters in range of them, or they can really pull one down. So yeah, this is a well-designed list that Joel obviously knows very well. He plays Seraphon a lot, so I'm not surprised he did well with it.
Yep, he was actually 2-1 going into the final round. He only drew in his final round, which also made the tie breaks a little weird. But he was right behind you guys because going into the final round, you two were both 2-0-1. He was in the mix.
Yeah,
he was in the mix to win it if both of you guys happen to lose your games. So he was not out of it.
No, the what messed with the pairings there is that he was there in points, but I had already beaten him, so we couldn't be rematched.
Yep.
And that paired him down. It's one of those weird tournament artifacts.
Yeah, we had 6 players. We played 4 rounds, and so it wasn't a complete round robin. And so as it turned out, Fred wound up playing Joel. Peter, you wound up playing, I think, the Soulblight Gravelords player, and that wound up being like the major changing opponents, which gave Fred the edge in the tie breaks.
Yeah. But it was a good list. Our game was very, very tight that we played. I remember in our game, my game against Joel, it was Reaper, and I was in a hole early because my Fomeroid died in the first round, but then the Varangard got to move right up the middle of the board and just right into those chaff models and just start killing, which it does, obviously very. And I just hid my Plague Bearers for the rest of the game, let the Varangard get me points. But very, very tight game. Came down to the very last activation on the last turn. Good list.
Yeah, very well thought out. Solid list.
Sure, I love Tearing Bite. I have a bunch of Seraphon models. I've never put them together coherently, but I think the faction is potentially very good. There's a lot of bad units in it, but there's also several very good ones. It makes list building an interesting puzzle to me.
I've been snatching up Starblood Stalkers everywhere I've seen it now.
Yeah, get those skinks, man.
I really want to build a Seraphon list, but with all the new models out, I just keep going like, when's the revamp happening? How much effort do I want to put into this? I don't know.
Yeah, because I had a 1.0 Skink Spam list, and that got absolutely nerfed into oblivion, completely unplayable. So it's like, okay, now the new meta for them is like Saurus Warriors. So I got some of those, and then the Hwachi's Hunters came out, which we don't see them here, but like that's a way you can go. Like the Hwachi's Claws or whatever those units are called are really, really good. Their reaction is insane. Like you could build that kind of Seraphon list. You can build a Tearing Bite list. You know, they're a relatively deep faction these days.
And also, yeah, outside the Starblood Stalkers, if you want to get into it cheap as well, if you want to get old Saurus Warriors, you look on eBay or you look locally, you can get them cheap. Because
I know a place the place we played this tournament had 900 old Saurus Warriors used for sale.
I was tempted. I still might. It's all about getting that cheap, good value on GW plastic.
Yep.
So a few more pictures here. So Joel actually wound up taking home a decent amount of prize money as well because in part due to the centerpiece, he got the best painted award. I think he had like 5 first place votes.
Yeah, he deserved.
4 or 5 first place votes out of the group.
Yeah, well deserved because his paint scheme. I think I told him like 3 times throughout the tournament. Like I couldn't stop looking at those models. They were great.
Big centerpiece, awesome basing there.
And even like the smaller models still were very well painted as well. It wasn't all just in the centerpiece. It was just good execution of like the color scheme and the plan across the whole warband. It looked really nice. It was very vibrant, very colorful, very well done.
Yeah, the Scar Veteran, that's a new model as well. He used one of the new sculpts there, and that one looks great too.
Yeah, those new sculpts are all great. The new Croxagors look awesome. I'd love to get updated Croxagor rules to make them good in Warcry because the models are great.
A few other pictures from our other competitors. These guys, all 3 of these guys were new, first time they played an event with us. So happy to have Adam Bryce, Hayden Proctor, and Todd Gentle join us, and we got pictures of their war bands as well, showing those off.
That KO list was solid. I played against it. I know Peter did as well. Very killy. If you let yourself get line to sight, they very, very killy. And the Blight King list is really interesting.
Yep. Well, you had the Fly Lord.
He did not. That's a Puscoil Blight Lord. That is not.
Oh, okay.
Afflictions. But I mean the same basic idea, right? It's just not the 330 point.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Unit. But
it holds its weight, that's for sure.
Yes. That even in 1.0 when Nurgle mortals were completely bottom tier, their flying units always were like almost good enough to make you want to play them. And now in 2.0, they're pretty good.
Yeah, so. It was interesting. The KO list, Todd, he was a very good player. You could tell he knew the war band very well. That I played him in Reaper, and it was a lot closer because I went and took out his ether cannon round 1 with my Crusher and just got right in there. And I thought right after the first round, like, I'm going to clean this up pretty quick. And it turned into an all-out brawl for the rest of the game. And actually, it was a very close match. To be honest, I thought every one of the lists that came to the tournament were just very well thought out.
The SBGL list was Graveguard centered. Like it was, no one came with just like.
They were strong, very strong lists.
You don't want to say like with misbuilt lists, but we're talking about a competitive event, right? So like there are lists that are like objectively on paper more powerful than others in a tournament in a competitive setting, and people brought good models and good lists to this event. Graveguard, Arknaut Privateers, like these are A tier units in the game, so there were no real easy matches in the whole room. And the Blight King list, which even after the 2.0 buff that all the move 3 units got, like Blight Kings are the ones that like people will say like, oh, except for Blight Kings. Like, oh yeah, every move 3 model in the game is busted except for Blight Kings. But Blight Kings are not bad. The problem is building a list of them is tricky because they have stuff with that Stormcast problem. Like your units are all 110 points. So it's like you try to do anything, clever with the list building and your points get immediately impossible. But they're hard to shift, a Blight King is, when it gets where it wants to be. And it lets your flyer go around and do a lot of damage. So a well thought out list and a well designed list. Nicely painted too, just nice and gross and nerdly.
Yep. Yeah, you're always going to be a contender in the painting category if you're playing Nurgle. Seems like
people love Papa.
All right, so next up here, the next segment we're going to talk about the battle report. So this was in round 3. Both of you guys were 2-0 going into this match, playing on loot and pillage, and winner of this game would be in the driver's seat when it comes to ultimately winning the event.
Yeah, if either of us had won this outright, I think that it would be difficult for them not to win the event at that point.
Yeah, based solely on tie breaks. Yes.
Yeah, that's not how it worked out, but that was both of what we were thinking going into this round. Obviously, we hadn't played each other since Gen Con, so it was cool to have a rematch. And loot and pillage is an interesting mission.
I know you. So you started your hammer. You had the FOMO in your hammer, right?
I believe so.
You started on the board. What was the big killer unit you had in your hammer that started, Peter?
Well, for me, I always put the Bounder Boss, Snurk, and a Brugit together because I just really like there. So that's what I started with. Yeah, that's a heavy duty deployment group right there. That can solve a lot of problems. Yep.
And it turns out they didn't actually. It wound up not being a fight in the center. We'll kind of talk about this here. So round one. So round one usually is just positioning, and this was really no exception. A shot I got. So the Fomeroid went towards the center. The Plague Bear started moving in towards the center as well. But there wasn't a big scrum in the middle. I believe, Peter, you were kind of diverting your guys over to the far right corner off out of view of the picture, right?
Well, so what ended up happening is I popped Madcap Destruction on my Bounder Boss. So what I did was I used Madcap Destruction to throw me on top of that center objective, because you have to use an action to grab a treasure.
Okay. So you okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, that helps. Yeah, I was trying to take notes, but I was still doing things. Normally, if I'm doing a battle report, I'll actually it would have drastically slowed the pace of your guys' game if I was taking complete notes. Okay, so Bounder Boss is coming from off screen, gets the treasure, and then is scooting out of there.
Yeah, because I knew with a Fomeroid in the center, as soon as he's going to get on top of that, you're not shifting that unless you remove it. So, and you have to use an action to grab the treasure. So I had to create an extra action to be able to get away from him. So that's ended up what I did at the beginning of the game with the Bounder Boss.
Yeah, good action economy. And then the Fomeroid went into the center, but he did not pick up a treasure, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It's correct. So real early in this game, and I guess we'll get to this, but there was a really heavy-duty decision point with the Fomeroid, and having him in the center of the board. The general idea is push hard to shift units into the center of the board and let them control some space, especially since, like we were saying, it does take an action to pick up treasure, which means without a bonus action, you can move, pick up a treasure, and then the Fomeroid can kill you and take your treasure. Because once the treasure's on the ground, it does not require an action to pick up. You just have to move over it. So I thought there was some good value of having him sort of threaten that position. Madcap Destruction kind of blew that plan up a little bit, because once the unit got away from me, then you're dealing with the fact that if you move him, the Fomoroid, up into the teeth of a Brugit, now you're in danger of getting him shredded down from there.
Yep.
So,
and not looting. I see what you mean by not looting, because again, you only have 8 actions in the game with your Fomoroid Crusher. You'd prefer to not spend one of them looting and giving him a treasure.
and also, if he's carrying a treasure, I'm less likely to want to move him into heavy combat where he could lose it late in the game. I'd much rather have my Plague Bearers take treasure and hide with it, and let my Fomoroid Crusher, my Varangard, just, if they have to, like, just run in and try to assassinate treasure killers, and they can die at that point.
Plus, the FOMO thread sitting in the center kind of denied the center for Peter the rest of the way. So a Plague Bearer would eventually be able to walk up and eventually grab the remaining treasure in the center.
Yeah, it kind of, the strategy became very quickly, as soon as I saw the Fomoroid going towards center, was I had to snatch a treasure and then get in that corner to create a kill box. Because that was going to be, I could then control 3 of the treasures and try to minimize and kill off everything on that side of the board.
Yeah, we'll see an overhead, and and that is where most of the big fighting was taking place. So round 2, we get the reinforcements on the board. This is in the far corner, not in the kill box corner.
Right. This is the opposite diagonal corner.
Yep.
From that.
So you have the Ardboy boss charging into combat, going after Sloppy Bilepiper, but only dealing 13. Brugit grabs a treasure, but then Sloppity manages to crit the Brugit for 16. And then, so Brugit actually drops the treasure. So now this is... Go ahead.
Neither I nor Peter at the moment were thinking about the fact that the treasure could be grabbed by moving over it, because we both talked about it like we had to spend an action to pick it up, and that becomes fairly important because it actually allows the treasure to get moved away from my slow-moving units here. That I wouldn't say we misplayed around it, but as we were evaluating the situation, both of us were thinking about how to best use an action to pick that treasure up.
Correct.
I think around 3 where it came up, I think I mentioned the fact that yes, once the treasure has been dug up from the ground, it no longer acts as a normal treasure. There's no action required to pick it up. It's essentially, if it's sitting in the ground, you got to burn an action to dig it up.
Yep. So that ends up mattering a lot here, that ends up being the majority of the meaningful fighting that happens in this corner of the board.
Yeah, and then Sloppity dealing 16 on the Brugit is kind of a little abnormal as well, but sometimes you get spiked, I guess.
Yeah. Absurd, I say.
Yeah, it was not the EV you get out of a Sloppity versus a Brugit the majority of the time. But
although to be fair, the Plague Bearers, they're 3/3/1/4?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've seen Plague Bearers. You don't expect much of Plague Bearers, or someone wades into a massive Plague Bearers, and then Plague Bearers just smash him down sometimes.
3/3/1/4 is surprisingly killy, especially on 50 points.
All right, so over here, so we get the Varangard that comes on the board. Fred's deployment point was on the center here, I believe, center of this edge. Varangard comes on, Relentless Killers, goes after the Bounder boss, only dealing 6 damage. The Plague Bearers, we're going to see in the next shot, they move to block in Peter's Crusher, Grom the Paunch.
Which was
one of the best things Plague Bearers do in the game, and really any good chaff model does in the game, is put up these sort of screens where you can kind of like set up these picks, right? Where it's like you can spread out enough that like the units can't effectively move through your screen, but they also can't engage your entire screen in one time. So it's a way to get your big units to burn actions, and it's a strategy that if you have good chaff models and you're trying to get territory control, you can set up these kind of long picket lines, and that's what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, it was good body blocking on your part, Fred.
And then what happened is Snurk did what Snurk does.
Yep. So you managed to get 2 Brugit activations on him, it looks like.
Well, and this is an under. I've played against Brugits before, and this is a line that I haven't seen people do very often, but it's absolutely something you really should be thinking about when you can set up Brugit bombs. Is what Peter did here, which is the Moonshine Potion, wait, Moonshine Potion out of one double action out of 1 Brugit. Because what do you else need the Brugit actions for? He's going to go up there and fight? Like, no, his job is to Moonshine Potion. And it was pretty effective.
Yeah, it definitely did the job. It unfortunately Snurk pulled his weight, but then Bounder Boss with 8 dice dropped the ball hard because that Varangard should have died.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So
again,
Snurk dealing 24.
Having the Varangard with 1 HP ends up coming up big. You don't want to leave a unit like a Varangard sitting there with HP at the end of the round, right? Like, so that ended up being very important for me. I knew moving up there that Snurk was going to kill my Varangard, like with the Brugit over there. The goal was for the Varangard to do a lot more damage to the Bounder Boss than he ended up doing, because the mobility on this type of mission I was worried about. The Bounder Boss can do a decent amount of damage, and he's fast. And when you're trying to get treasures and stuff, like, you don't want the Bounder Boss having the game-breaking treasure in his hands and just jumping all over the board.
Yep. And here you can see the proximity of the Varangard and the Bounder Boss here, because they're stuck in both with 1-inch range. And I think this is Snurk right here. So
Snurk has 3-inch range.
Yeah, so he's pretty safe. So even though he's a glass cannon, in this particular situation, with the Varangard locked up with the Bounder Boss, it's actually a pretty, I mean, you're loading up Snurk like this. This is a play that could be broken up, but in this case, Snurk's pretty safe.
Well, you have to place, if you're going to play Snurk, you can't make mistakes with Snurk. No. If you make a mistake with Snurk, you are throwing 130 points right into the trash. You have to play so tight with Snurk. And this is an example of how you can effectively get the most value out of Snurk and not just have him die immediately. This is, this deployment right over here.
Yep. And if I know, go ahead.
I was just saying too, and it didn't apply to this particular match, but something just to kind of keep in mind too. The reason Brugit is always in that, because he can either Moonshine Potion the Bounder Boss or Snurk, right? But his other role is to play intercept for Snurk. I can't tell you how many games where he ended up just charging blindly into something just to allow Snurk the opportunity to strike. So part of playing with Snurk is being able to protect him. And if you can, he's going to earn you way more than that 130 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like in this case.
Yeah.
I want you to keep in mind here that the Varangard has 6 toughness. All right? Like, it's a hard target, and Snurk just casually 24'd him.
Yep. And if my notes are correct, so 24 plus 5, that puts the Varangard with 1 hit point remaining.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Because I think because Varangard's 30 wounds or 30. It was 30 wounds.
I thought it was 30 even.
Yeah, that sounds right. I'm not looking at it, but the point is this. The Varangard could have very easily and should have died there, but did not, with very few HP left.
Yep.
So this is a real pivotal point in the game. Peter and I talked about it a lot. Obviously, he's ahead right now. The Fomoroid is completely a wild card right now, has no wounds on it, and is capable of kind of turning the tide of a fight by showing up. He's in the middle of the board.
Yep.
There is a very small battle going on in one corner, and there is a big battle going on in the other.
Yep. Here's the small battle here with the Ardboy boss probably being the biggest fighter here, and we have Sloppity and a couple chaff models. Here's the big fight here, up here is the FOMO with 2 turns, just simply just moving into this corner here. Here we got the Vanguard, the Bounder Boss, Snurk, and then the rest of the packages all kind of around here. Netter, Git, and then also the Crusher. The Crusher's chewing through the chaff, but it hasn't gotten to the Vanguard yet.
So the Crusher started this round in the middle of the board. And I could do one of 2 things here. I could move him to come over and kill the Ardboy boss, because I like my odds there, right? And mop up that corner. At which point, I would have access to half the treasures on the map and have a pretty good chance of holding, in the final round, half the treasures in the game. I could reasonably expect to hold them and protect them, which would be playing for the draw.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Fulmoroid could move into the big battle. We could steer into the skid and attempt to play for the win, which is more of a long shot because the positioning is not in my favor over here, right? It's moving him up into Snurk plus Brugit, where Peter is already sort of established and set up, deployed how he wants his deployment group or his battle to look. So it's a more dangerous line for the FOMO, but it does give me the option of playing for the win if I can clear some of these models out.
Yep,
and that's what I decided to do.
Yeah, and you have a wounded Vanguard and like a fresh and a fresh Crusher too. Yes,
the Crusher is very dangerous. The FOMO can kill the Crusher, but the FOMO is not a slam dunk against the Crusher, especially if the Crusher gets to attack first, and especially with the Brugit on the battlefield. So, there's some real risk going on over here.
Yep. And so this after 2 turns out, right, and we had some wounded units, this is a pivotal initiative roll. So a lot of times you don't care about who gets initiative, but sometimes you got to fight for it. And so here we actually did have a fight for initiative roll off. So there was some jockeying of wild dice there.
For the people at home, this is exactly how our final round went in Gen Con.
Yep.
It came down to initiative. It was a hotly contested initiative into the final round, and I won it, and I very narrowly won the game. If Peter had won initiative in this round, he very easily wins this game. But he did not.
Yep. Yeah, it was one of those situations. And this also followed up with probably my biggest mistake in the game, which was when you won initiative and went with the Vanguard, really all I had to do with that Bounder boss was counter.
Yes.
Yep. And I didn't counter the first action.
Yep, there's Vanguard. Yep, because I was watching this. So Vanguard pops Relentless Killers, gets 6 attacks versus the Bounder boss, killing the Bounder boss, dropping the treasure back behind him. But at 1 hit point, right? Any 1 hit point model is just a massive liability. So just like you said, a counter, right, takes them both off the board and changes it. But now, as we see, as the turn played out, there was more. The Vanguard was still had to burn an action on somebody, or someone had to burn an action to finally take out the Vanguard.
And so something to keep in mind here also, Relentless Killers is only better than Onslaught if you have a 6. It gives you +1 attack over Onslaught double attack. So we happen to have that here and gives you the big burst damage. Also, it gives you a chance to use your second action elsewhere. So it's a great tool whether you're stuck in combat or moving and attacking. It's just really versatile. So the big thing here is the Bounder boss drops the treasure. That's the big takeaway right now. And then Prague misses his net on the FOMO.
Yeah, here's Prague right here. And it's a 3+ net.
Yeah, it was kind of my dice did not favor me.
They betrayed you very aggressively in this round, yes.
Yeah, because the idea was lock the Fulmoroid down, and then most of the guys that carried treasure could just run away, and that just left the Crusher to intercept with your Fulmoroid for the rest of the game. But that is not how it played out. So I kind of had to divert with Prague, which ended up creating what we talk about, the outlet for the Fulmroid to finally grab something.
So now that I'm seeing how this turn played out, did you have the ability for Prague to attempt to net on the Fulmroid and have an action left to try to take out the 1 hit point Varangard?
Well, if I remember correctly, didn't my bounder, I didn't do anything the first action. He did the damage. My bounder was almost dead, so I counted. They both
you countered on this.
The second.
No, you
What?
I believe you countered on this. No, both
Yes.
attacks.
Countered on the second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I countered the second, I believe, if I remember correctly.
But it wasn't, no, because it wasn't a mutual kill.
I thought it was a mutual kill.
Yeah.
No, because my notes say here that the Crusher had to chew through and eventually took out the Varangard later in the turn by using Might Makes Right after killing the Plague Bearer.
Okay, maybe that's true then.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I'm watching this right, and I mentioned to you guys after the entire attack sequence, I'm surprised. I mentioned to Peter, I'm surprised you didn't use counter there.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have said that prior to your first attack or your second attack.
This is true.
Yeah, fair point.
So what you can see here is the idea here is the Plague Bearer is hoping to suck up an action from the Crusher over there.
Yep. So the Plague Bearer, right? So this Plague Bearer, right, locks him up, and so now the Crusher has to chew through the Plague Bearer. Pops Might Makes Right.
Also, a really good ability. A lot of factions have access to it. Ogres use it really well because it's on so many big, heavy hitters that are likely to one-shot models. It was obviously the core of the Thunderfist list in 1.0 because they could Might Makes Right shooting attacks and just machine gun down these chaff models back when everybody was playing 8-wound chaff models. But it comes up really big here. Obviously, getting free actions is really good. So what we have here is there's a treasure, right? That treasure that you see on that is a really important piece of treasure. It would be my third treasure, taking away Peter's fourth treasure, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, because it's currently 4-2.
So,
or now 3-2 with one contested.
Yeah.
So Prague attempted to throw the net, failed, so he then stepped up to body block the Fulmroid.
Okay, that was his plan.
Yeah, he was not in range. Okay. Yeah, he had to move up to.
Yeah. After failing the net, he did the only thing he could still do.
Yes.
Throw his body and
sacrifice his body.
Yes. Which surprisingly, which was the other funny part of it, is because he survived that round.
Yeah.
Yep, he did.
Yeah, who can? Prague went up against a Fulmroid and survived a round. That Netta, I love that guy.
He's a good dude. So yeah, you can see what's going on.
Yep, I can't read because you were using dice, Peter, and that's the damage on Prague. I can't read it, but yes, he obviously took at least one hit.
Yeah, I think he was down to 1 or 2 health. It wasn't much.
So the aerial shot, you can see the Varangard's gone. I don't have a ton of models left, but the treasure I have is very safe.
Yep.
Where I have it.
I think it's this plague. There's a Plague Bearer hiding underneath this bridge here.
Yeah, and I think the other one down there underneath the tree is my other treasure carrier right now. Just not doing much this game except holding treasure and creating screens, which is great. They're 50 points. Like let's use them for that. So. And the Fulmroid is in a lot of danger potentially.
Yep. So round 4 here. Looks like Fred wins initiative again.
I am spectacularly good at winning initiative.
If I learned anything from playing against Fred, it's don't roll off on initiative against him.
Not worth the dice.
No.
The Fulmroid takes out Prague, and then he rushes, grabs the treasure, and then runs away from the fight. So I'm assuming you're afraid of the Crusher at this point.
And at this point, round 4, looking at the material left on the board, the Crusher, etc. At this point, I am playing for the tie. My odds of using the Fulmoroid to pop another treasure loose and survive are very, very low. So at this point, I'm like, I can probably squeak out of this with a tie if the Fulmoroid runs. So
and this was, let's see here.
If it wasn't for that Crusher, there would be different.
And I'm keeping track of the treasure score here. And so this is showing Peter 2, Fred 3 with 1 unclaimed. I believe when you killed Prague, you got a treasure off of, was Prague carrying a treasure as well?
That's the founder boss treasure that has not been picked up yet.
Okay. But there's still one more unclaimed one after you grabbed this one.
Yeah, and that was Prague, I believe. Okay.
Yep. So Prague had one. Prague had a treasure, and then you still had the Bounder Boss's treasure, which no one had time to go grab yet.
Right.
Correct.
So I can't get that one, right? Because
you only carry one.
Right.
And you only got one model left in that area of the board.
Yeah.
And we got some goblin getting countered off somewhere else.
Yeah, well, you had the other the little match in the corner still happening at the time.
There was still some fighting going on over there.
Because the Hardboy boss had worked through the Bile Piper and had killed off another Plague Bearer at that point. And then Fred, you were able to kill the Netta that was what was it, the Netta or the Netta grabbed the last
it had to be the Netta because nothing
that's
else.
Where that came up where you didn't have to use an action, so you moved up, took the treasure, and moved out. But Plague Bearers couldn't catch him at that point. Where as I was thinking about it, if he would have taken an action to pick it up, he would have been stuck there, and the Plague Bearers could have surrounded him a little bit and kept that treasure local. But that was again just me not thinking correctly, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah, and a little bit of a toss-up too, because that Hardboy boss was just blending everything.
Yes, he was.
Yep,
it really was.
And so we have some treasures dropping here, but at the very end, you're getting a little low on model count for available models to grab treasures. Fred is. Peter has the models left to pick up the treasures sitting on the ground, fortunately. However, he is a little bit out of distance to try to make a run at trying to get a treasure back from Fred. Although there was one shot at it though. So this is probably one of the last activations of the game. So he had a rampage. Crusher rampages an attempt to get to the Fulmoroid, who put some distance between himself and the rest of the Gitz. Took about 11 points, it looks like, but not enough to go down. So the end result of the battle, a hard-fought 3-3 draw.
Very tight. Could have changed at several points. Either of the last 2 rounds of initiative had gone differently.
Yeah. Net results, etc.
Yeah, it was a tight game for the whole match.
It was indeed. Last time I had my incredibly broken list to lean on. That got nerfed into the ground, so I had to play fair.
Yeah, I don't miss 1.0 spiders.
No. If I could play them and nobody else could, I would love them. But, no one else took them to Gen Con. I expected a bunch of people to take them. But
yeah, I was looking for a solid rematch here, and it's exactly what I got. So
yes, it was a tight one.
Yeah, it was a solid game. Yeah, I was kind of happy to find enough with the draw because it could have gone a couple of different ways throughout the match.
Yeah, definitely. So,
any other takeaways from this? We had talked a little bit about the scoring, and I talked about it on Tabletop Beyond with Justin as well. How there was a number. This was a incredibly close game, ended in a draw. There was a couple other pretty close games that ended in, but the way that they ended, it winds up being a 20-0, 20-0, or maybe a 15-5, which definitely kind of obscures the fact it was a very, very tight match and a very close game that could have gone either way.
I don't think that's a problem. I think that if you want more points at the end of a match, you should win your matches. And the final score will reflect the person that wins matches. Like, I think winning is important in a competitive event, and we should reward the person that wins the match. if I wanted to be an uncontested first place going into the final round, I should have won my match that I drew, and I didn't. I mean, like most games, competitive games, don't even have a major minor way for the loser to get anything back. You get 2 points for winning or no points for losing and a point for drawing, and that's all you get.
Yeah.
So
Justin's
I know there's been a lot of
system
chatter about it, but I don't think it's a problem. I think Warcry's scoring system is fine.
Yeah, Justin's
Your
system
matches
is
win tournaments.
yeah, Justin's system is trying to do something like Kill Team does, where it kind of gets you have a little more granularity there. I would kind of like that as well, but you also brought up a good counterpoint to where like once you know you have the game in hand, you sort of protect that lead and don't necessarily like grind a new player into the dirt as hard as you possibly could, right? You're capable of
the
tabling
final standings. I would play harder till the very last activation, and I would win by wider margins in the games that I won. It's not relevant. I think you're going to create, if you try to do that, you're going to create more feel bads for the loser than you will fixing. You'll have less close games. There'll be more incentive for the winner to maximize their score.
Yeah, table their opponents or whatever.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. Until I see a really good system that kind of incorporates, that scoring system. I'll probably keep doing it the way I'm doing it.
I'll be really curious to see how Nova goes this year, because it's something I kind of enjoyed about Atlantic City. Everybody grumbles about Rumble Pack as a whole, and I agree with a lot of the points, but at the same time, it was really fun to go to a tournament and play all 6 Rumble Pack. And I think it's going to be kind of exciting at Nova entering a very different type of a tournament. And we'll see what the takeaways are from that. But I'm always open to new ways of approaching the game. It's funny because that was my second biggest mistake in this tournament. Was my very first match. For some reason, I got in my head that it was more than half my warband being taken down was the difference between a major and a minor.
Yeah, and it winds up, half will do it.
Yeah, and I had the ability to have that not happen, but I wasn't worried about losing that one extra model because I thought it was more than half. So that ended up biting me for the rest of the tournament and was my minor win versus a major.
Yeah, because you guys were 3-0-1 and then also had the same number of points.
Yeah.
After totaling up majors and minors.
Yeah, and that I paid for it the rest of the tournament because it was an easy fix and it was just a simple thought of one model difference. And that, I don't know, that kind of bothers me, the major minor, what it's based on. And I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see how Nova goes.
Like, so to my point earlier, it's like, we're talking like, oh, these games are so close, let's put more agency in the players' hands to get more granularity in the score. Well, the agency's there, right? Like Peter was saying, like, if he had that thought, he could have played the end of the game in a way that gave him that agency, and it would have affected his standings. Like, the game has systems in place. Like I'm saying, if you want to win a tournament, like, win your matches, and the rest will shake out, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know how much more control we need over that than, like, win your games and then see who has the most wins.
Yeah, true. And you do have some agency in getting the major versus the minor sometimes. Or if you've lost the game, right, you still have a secondary goal, which is, cost your opponent as dearly as you can.
Sure. I mean, so personally, I think that's fine. I mean, are there other ways to approach it? Sure. And if there's a better way, I play it. I don't have a problem with it. But I think there's been a lot of talk about it, like the system is fundamentally broken, and that I don't agree with. I think that, like,
well, BCP's implementation of it wasn't perfect either. It was doing some buggy stuff I had to kind of work around as well. But I was small enough tournament, I was able to kind of do tie breaks by hand and verify.
And playing devil's advocate too, though, when you think about it, talk about kind of feel bads and overscoring, but when a guy has an ability to score some extra points that might affect how low he is if he's losing his games versus just getting a 0, I don't know. I feel like there's a couple different ways you can approach that.
Yeah, I think so. I guess I come from a competitive Magic background, and in Magic, like, nobody asks how your games went, right? It's like, did you win the match or did you lose the match? Did you get 2 points or did you get 0 points? And that has seemed to work fine for the 30-year history, competitive history of the game. And like coming into wargaming, people are like, well, I want to put a sportsmanship score on it, and it's like that is strange to me. Like, from a pure competitive standpoint, it's like who won the match and who did not win the match.
That's true. Yeah, you win.
Like, how bad does the loser feel? It's like, well, I don't know.
You get the same number. Yeah, you get the same number of points if you win by the skin of your teeth at one life versus just dominating your opponent in 2 turns.
Winning on turn 1, they never took a game action, right? Like, and no one comes by and is like, so how many cards were left in your deck? Let's determine points. You know, it's just like, I don't know. I think it works fine. But
well, following along that lines too, that's something to think about, because something I really appreciate about Warcry is the community.
I was going to say that as one of my takeaways. Everybody that I've ever played has been awesome.
It's very, very healthy. I could count on one hand bad experiences I've had with the game, and I've played a lot at this point. And it's a great community. And yeah, you think about that, because you want that friendly environment to stay.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I got a story I'll tell. So it's not directly related to Warcry. So I'm hanging out with, we got a German DoD civilian essentially kind of working with us, and he's telling us a story, and we're talking about games and stuff, and he's like, yeah, hey, I saw this, there's this war game and people play and they always get in a fist fight afterwards. They get in a real fight afterwards. And I'm like, is it Warhammer? And he said, yeah. I was like, yep, sounds like most Warhammer to me.
Yep. I would not, at this point in my life, and I'm 41 years old at this point, right? I would not have a lot of enthusiasm about packing up all my stuff and going and spending all day playing 40K. And a lot of that is community related. I've run into a lot of negative experiences playing competitive 40K. Warcry has been night and day in terms of, and even better than, like, I've had mostly great experiences playing Magic competitively, and Warcry is significantly better community than that. So yeah, if you come up with a system that preserves that community better, I'll play it. That's fine. I don't have a problem with it.
Well, those are some surprisingly wholesome takeaways. I'm glad.
Yeah, I've literally never had a bad tournament experience in Warcry. I was just thinking about that. Like, I can't name one. So,
speaking of positive Warcry experiences, upcoming events. So I'm currently recording this from my hometown of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. This is part of my Dayton Warcry Club road show. So I drove up visiting my family. As of the time of recording, tomorrow I'm going to St. Paul to play a narrative event. And also on the way back, I'm hoping to go to Madison and meet up with some of the Dogs of Warcry folks and play some pickup games as well.
They're a great group. What a great group.
Yeah, they are. So this narrative event is interesting. It's actually Avery. He's one of the locals there in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. He's running this event, and so it's narrative, but so the twist here, it's not a whole lot of narrative added on, but there is some growth involved. Round 1, warband construction. You can only have 1 hero, 1 thrall, 1,000 points. And then you grow 50 points each round, and then you also your cap on your heroes and thralls goes up as well. He's gonna have some generic thralls available. If you just have a 1,000-point list, you can just kind of add those to your list as well. By the time you guys are seeing or watching this, the event will have passed. But the next episode, I'll probably be talking about this. If I do well. If I get smashed, you will never hear about it again. But
yeah.
But that's what the Flesh Eater Courts are for. So I have several options to play. It's for Flesh Eater Courts. I've got a couple different configurations that kind of get around. Kyle Smith did have a fairly low model count. So I'm not going to play his list in round 1. I'm going to just do a little bit different configuration, which gives me more model count. But then rounds 2 and 3, I'm going to be basing something off of his list and just use the additional points to just plus up the model count. Play, have 8 or 9 ghouls or models total.
Death Thralls are good too.
They're generic thralls that they're using. I don't know if you can use the thralls from the book. Okay. You might be able to, but I think you might be using his thralls. And I can't remember.
Bats I like for SPGL because your rank and file are slow, and bats give you some speed. You don't really need them as much in FEC where everything either moves 5 or flies.
Yeah, and I didn't ask, and I probably don't have a configuration where I'd use them anyway, but I just realized before I left, I magnetized them and added them to the collection. You didn't see it before, but Duke's Harriers.
Yeah.
I have Duke's Harriers, so I threw that in there as well. So I have that added to the collection of Flesh Eater available to me.
Cool. That and that warband, very, very nice piece.
Yeah, I don't think I have any of the 20 points to spare in any of those configurations though. It's all going to be Chosen of the King it up and whatever the Vargolf Berserker Rage is.
Yeah, you'll do just fine with that, I think.
Yes, Chosen of the King is so nutty. Anyway, I could talk about FEC for a long time, but we're in the wrap-up phase here.
Yeah. Next local events. I was targeting July 30th at Epic Loot. However, it looks like there's a conflict, and I haven't gotten any other word back from them on an alternate date. So, in the interest of making sure I get something on the books, and I'll start advertising this in the local Discords, I want to do something that weekend. So, July 29th at Mavericks. You going to be free?
Me? Yes.
Fred, yeah. You too, Peter. You can drive out and play. This is just open play. Just show Mavericks. We don't even really have to RSVP. We just show up with our stuff and play.
They got a million tables and so.
But we're gonna. So I'll set that up, and we got a couple folks that are a little bit closer to the Cincinnati area. So hopefully we can maybe catch a little more of the folks that down at Mavericks then.
Yeah, I was going to say usually our turnout's better at Epic Loot, but if you live in the Mason, Westchester, Cincinnati area, come see us at Mavericks. Mavericks is a great shop, and we'll have games.
This brings us to a close for this episode of Dayton Warcry Club. We'll be back next time with a report from my travels across the Midwest, and also a preview of the Nova Open as we look forward to that event. In the meantime, you can always chat with us on the official Warcry Discord, link in the description below. Until then, I'm War Machine,
Fred Shred,
and Peter.
Thanks for listening. This brings us to a... Whoa. God damn.